I'm very happy to introduce Chris Ivory. We just watched together the upskill video, and Chris is professor of innovation management at Mälardalens. I have
Mälardalen, close enough.
Almost well pronounced university in Sweden, and scientific coordination of the project Upskill. To follow up with you what it was already mentioned in the video we shared together. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours, Chris.
Thank you. So, okay, in this presentation, based on Upskill and our discussions in Upskill, I'm going to take a slightly sort of higher level view than necessarily getting down into the empirics. If I had one message sort of bouncing off the previous conversation, I would say that we probably do need a bit of a revolution, if you like, to move away from one mindset to a new mindset, a new way of thinking about how we do industry, etc., etc. So, and I think there's a route to doing that, which is really improving the power and influence of the workforce itself on industry. So I'll explain why and hopefully convince you of that as well. So, to understand the technology we're dealing with, we need to make a distinction between two key sort of formats of basically the same technology, digital technology. One is automation, and this slide also suggests, which is the basic rationale for our project, that there's a sort of a managerial intent here. So some firms will be driven towards automation, which is the replacement of workers. And other types of firms in the bottom two rows will be more orientated towards being human-centric already. So these might be highly skilled firms, artisanal firms, firms creating technologies which are very difficult to make, so they can't get rid of people, and also they don't want to get rid of people. AA at the top, there's a full dedication there to automation. AAH, they kind of find out that you want to automate, but in the end you need to bring people back in to get things like quality and innovation. So this is the main distinction I want to make between automation and augmentation. So it would be unfair of me not to talk about the project generally. So here we are in the centre here. We have Anglia Ruskin, University of Milan, and MDU, my university, Mälardalen, and we are mostly responsible for the case studies, the ethnographic case studies. And what we try to do in the project is get a range of organisations which fit into those different categories. And it's probably worth making one point. We assume that the Italian case studies would be all artisanal and would put humans first and would not be interested in automation. But we found a real mix. So there's something around values here that comes into play in firms we've found. Some firms which are very artisanal are also very, very enthusiastic about automation. So some surprises. Companies like Ford, I'm sure they won't mind being mentioned. We would imagine they would be AAA, full-on automation, but actually not at all. They have a real commitment to not introducing technologies which disturb workers. They have a very good relationship. Well, they have a relationship with workers they need to keep balanced, if you want to put it that way. So, okay, where are we now? This is so this slide tries to capture two things. It's the sort of industry 4.0 epoch that we're in now, and have probably been in since, you know, the mid-70s, late 60s onwards, perhaps. And it's a particular mindset, and the mindset is around acceleration and escalation, as Hartmut Rosa puts it. And this mindset views workers, this is where I want to bring workers in a very particular way. So they see workers as a problem to production, because obviously the motive here is acceleration and escalation. So they see work as a potential barrier to that. They see, I've heard one firm, not in this project, actually refer to workers as the wage bill problem. So a desire really to, and I've heard firms in Sweden say similar things, again, not in this project. So giving workers a strong voice in this context is seen as very, very risky, and firms generally don't want to do it. It's absolutely not true of all firms, but this also describes the general ethos that we're living in, and we know its name, if you like. Now, this leads to demand for particular sorts of technologies, or a particular variant of this technology. It's all about automation, it's all about surveillance, it's all about data collection on processes to accelerate processes, produce more, and augmentation where it does occur, and cooperative robots and that sort of thing tends to be a step towards full automation, if you like, and it's certainly not trusted by the workforce for that reason. So where is it we want to get to? Well, we all want to get to Industry 5.0, and I've picked my terms carefully here: sustainable and shared prosperity, because actually this is in reality quite an old model. So in this mindset, let's forget about epochs and talk about organizational mindset, managerial mindset. Workers are regarded as citizens and they should have a decent standard of living. Skilled workers should be retained and supportive, workers are trusted, and workers have a strong collective voice, and this is not, well, it might be seen as problematic by firms, but it's accepted as a necessary evil, if you like, to keep relations with the workforce. And we have actually lived through this epoch. It's actually the post-war shared prosperity model that was prevalent in the US and Sweden and still to some extent in those countries, well, Sweden and Germany perhaps. So, and this kind of mindset also encompassed the environment as well. If you think about speeches by Robert Kennedy, for example, he encapsulated this shared prosperity model with limits to a growth model as well, and limits of what we can do with this planet. But anyway, as a general epoch as well, this mindset leads to augmentation aimed at better quality work and production, giving workers more control. Surveillance is not interesting because they trust the workforce. Cobots literally are cobots. They're not a step towards something else. And data collection becomes around providing information that allow workforces to work themselves. Management can take a step back. Workers usually know what they're doing, we find. So automation, data collection can also be around carbon footprint analysis rather than just speeding up production. Now, the other crucial thing about bringing workers in and giving them a stronger voice, and I am talking here about unionization, etc. Once workers have a strong voice, once they can be troublesome, and once they will go on strike if they need to, this can be around issues to do with sustainability. I mean, we tend to cordon off workers as some special category of person. Actually, it's us, right? They're citizens, so they bring these views into the organization to balance out the interests of shareholders, the interests of growth, acceleration, and so forth. So this is the model I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting something slightly more radical. And the root to that is empowering workers. And I'll just say one final thing. The whole history of technology change tells us that when workers are weak, we get automation. When workers are strong, we get augmentation. That's just going to claim that's a historical fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. A lot of challenges ahead for your project Upskill, but please keep us informed of the achievements in terms, as you mentioned before, of sustainability and shared prosperity. Now, I would like to open the floor to the audience, and for that we will use, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Slido. And let me check the Slido. In that case, I take out my glasses. Allora, I read the first question, which is, how can the industry receive support in developing solutions aligned with sustainability principle? So who is volunteer to pick up? It can be even two colleagues to pick up the first question. Thank you, Stephen.
Yes. Well, if it starts at the industry level, as I've pointed out, it's about trying to find support in the educational system and trying to find support in new ways of thinking that are needed for this industrial change. So we hope from our project, from the British project, that having an understanding of these existing interventions, but then adapted to Industry 5.0, that can help them to create this alignment that is needed in the future.
Thank you. Anybody would like to add? Otherwise, I go to the second question, and I read it. How will the community of practice contribute to support companies in adapting to the changing ecosystem and meeting the requirements of Industry 5.0? Now I have two candidates. Very good. Maybe you can start, Livio, and you can complement.
Thanks. So the community of practice is one of the initiatives that I mentioned earlier. So it's sort of policy-driven one. The earlier question was much more on industry itself, but also helping industry. On this, it is part. The community of practice is part of this offer to industry to help share best practices, to get the leaders in this transition to help the others who are interested to make it. So it is about sharing and exchanging best practices, but also drafting common guidelines, also pulling resources, also making jointly the case for consumers, and be it business to business or business to consumer type of industry players, to really let them be responding to demands of their customers, to demands of citizens at large. It's really, in this sense, draws back to what I mentioned in the beginning, that it's an initiative that aims to give voice and action, a sort of a role, an active role to industry in this transition, so that it's not just driven by policy and by civil society, but by industry itself. And I think that is the sort of support that the public sector can afford industry. But at the end of the day, and this is also the message that we're trying to make, it's in the industry's self-interest to do this. It's in the industry's self-interest to work with their workers so that they stay attractive and that they stay competitive, because at the end of the day, it is a sort of market economy dynamic that we're trying to help them with. But I think Chris wanted to...
Well, I guess it also links to the second question after this, which is about education. You know, we need to really think about how we educate our managers, and we are certainly not in our MBA programs. I can tell you this for a fact, not educating them in this kind of sense that we need to move into a new mindset, new era. And we're not achieving that. I think it was again, I'm tipping into the next question now, which was about business education. I think Martin Parker said, I don't know if you're aware of him, professor in the UK, said we should bulldoze all of our business schools and start again.
Exactly.
He's right. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So the follow-up question was, do you think the current business education is no longer sufficient for this purpose? And do you need to reconsider how to train on next generation of managers, the next generation of managers? So anything?
I can
Thank you, Gaetano. Maybe you can complete.
I think that the short answer would be yes, of course, it's no longer sufficient for its purpose. But then the problem is what we have to do and how we can manage this. And the problem is that at the end, let's say, a good manager is the one that is capable to understand, let's say, what will be the next future. Because if we think to, let's say, to train our managers with what we see today, maybe tomorrow it's already too late. So I think that at the end we have to manage to train our managers to understand the real future, the real next needs of the of our society. And I think that this will be the difference between a good manager and bad manager.
Thank you, Gaetano. Very good. Oh yeah, please, Nikki.
Just to add on top of that, it is important also in the training aspect to consider that we need to integrate the twin transition parameters, so that the next generation of managers have already integrated in the skill set what is needed for the digital and the green transition, and also to help them have access to the pan-European innovations that are already available and how they can work to integrate them in their industry and in their processes.
Very good point, Nikki. Thank you. You wanted to...
Yeah, no, I think training is important, and the managerial mindset is important, and practices. You know, as you pointed out, Stephen, there's the practices that need to change. But I think education is possibly too weak a lever for that. I think, you know, there's no point well-trained managers going into an industrial context where they're still playing the same old game, as it were. And government has levers at its disposal. You know, taxation changes. At the minute, we tax labour very highly and capital very low. So of course, that encourages automation, for example. So I think we need to think about things like that in the regulatory environment. If we ignore these things in this discussion about 5.0, then I don't think we're gonna get there.
So from what you are saying, it must be a 360 degrees approach. All the angles should be tackled to have a success results, from education to experience.
You know, if I may just to add on this, again, drawing back to the presentation I made, one of these reports that I pointed out, drawn up by the ESIR group of advisors, pointed exactly to these levers. So we have education, we have taxation, but we also have financial flows. So we're trying to, with initiatives like the taxonomy, you know, to drive the wider ecosystem in which our European industry operates to make this transition, be it, as I said, financial flows or skills or education or taxation, to really help that. So I think the question was very right in the sense of pointing to one aspect, but the conversation and the transformation, I said not revolution, but I think it sort of starts to add up to a revolution, is much broader than that.
Now, there are still two questions. I'm not sure we have time. I can pick it up one. I read. In your opinion, what are the key challenges in the industrial transformation in Europe? If you can say really one sentence, because we have to conclude it.
Well, if I can start, sorry, Marina.
Yes, of course.
So one of the main challenges is that we have to understand how we can get this collaboration together. Comparing Belgium and the Netherlands, the two countries where I work, productivity in Belgium is added value per worker is about 25% higher in Belgium than compared to the Netherlands. But trade unions are extremely strong in Belgium. They're quite weak in the Netherlands. So it's not the fact that you have strong trade unions that it's going to be an impediment for change. You have to work with your workers. It has to become human-centric if we want to make this change work.
I think everybody agreed with your last sentence. It has to become human-centric. So I'm sorry we can't continue with the question and answer simply because we have to respect the timetable. And I would take the opportunity of the last minute to say a few words of conclusion. First of all, warmly thank the audience for being with us all this hour. And of course, to all of you speakers, very interesting presentation, and I learned a lot from you. You really shared fascinating insight into the industrial landscape, emphasizing that effective facilitation of digital and green transition demands a shift towards new broader perspective and new models. I think that's a conclusion that we can all share.